Hi guys, in this video I'm going to be covering the massive news story which is circulating at the moment, which is what Apple are introducing to iOS 14, which is going to disrupt the social media marketing agency space and Facebook ads. So in this video I'm going to be covering what Apple has said, what Facebook's response was to what Apple have put out, also what the new changes are that Apple are implementing into the iOS 14 software, and then if you stay around to the end I'm going to tell you a bit about what I think it means to the social media marketing space, what it means for new agency owners and what it means to existing agency owners, and how you can sort of prepare yourself for this new software and how big of an issue I actually think it's going to be. So from the get-go, I think it's super important to state that we don't know currently how big of a deal this is going to be. Facebook have released sort of guidelines, which we're going to go through in a second, about what they think these new privacy policies are going to mean for running Facebook ads. But we don't know how big this is going to affect the targeting, how big it's going to affect our retargeting campaigns, how big it's going to affect our pixel data, and how we go about collecting data on potential customers. So at the moment, there's no need to panic. There's no need to panic about stuff that we don't know yet. There's been loads of these new updates in the past and people have blown them out of proportion massively. But this one does seem a little bit different, but there's no point panicking until we actually know the effect it's going to have. And we just need to wait until we can get on the actual ad platform and see how it's changed. So I've seen a lot of these videos on YouTube at the moment, and people always start with loads of negatives, and then it scares you, and then you think, oh no, Facebook ads is over, I've just started an agency, or an existing agency owner, or I've just signed a client, what am I going to do when Facebook ads is ruined forever? And that's not the case. The good news is we have a $1 billion company in Facebook on our side, so they'll be fighting for our corner, whether that's because they actually care about small business owners or because they care about their profits. Either way, we have them essentially on our side and fighting our corner to get this targeting back. Throughout this video, I'm going to be slightly biased because obviously my businesses rely heavily on Facebook ads and digital marketing campaigns and having access to as much data as possible, but I'm also going to cover what I think of the privacy policy. I do think it is for the best because privacy and data, it's a massive thing at the moment and people are really worried about it, especially the older generation who don't understand it massively. So I'm just going to cover what each party has said. So first of all, if we go onto the Apple website, there's a privacy section on their homepage just to update everyone what they're introducing. And I think this is a big marketing play from Apple, as well as an ethical play as well, because there is loads of news in at the moment. Facebook are always in the news, always being sued over privacy issues. And a lot of people are saying that Apple are introducing this privacy policy so that they can create more revenue streams from the App Store and other types of services. So obviously all the free apps on the App Store, they get majority of their funding and their revenue from advertisers. In the Facebook ads platform, you can choose a placement on your marketing campaigns as the audience network, and that sends all of your ads out to those free apps. And through Apple forcing Facebook to remove this and limiting advertisers to that platform and through that placement method, then app developers are going to be forced to move to paid apps or more in-app purchases. And that's obviously going to make Apple a lot more money because they take a cut of all sales on the App Store. So there is two sides of it. Apple are going to say it's for privacy reasons and to protect their customers, but then Facebook's argument is that it's a revenue play and it's a business move. So if we go onto the Apple website, you click on the privacy drop-down menu, it says Safari throws trackers off your trail. So they're introducing machine learning softwares to throw these trackers off so they can no longer retarget, they can no longer track people when they're using websites. And we don't know how much this is going to affect pixels, and we don't know whether this is just on apps, because on the Facebook website a lot of the content they've put out is directed more towards people using the audience network and more people advertising on apps. But they also do go into saying that the tracking and the targeting on web conversions is also going to be massively affected, but we're going to go into that later. But so like it says here, they're going to be implementing softwares that is going to make it harder to track customers and to track people over what they do online. And realistically, that is a good thing because obviously everyone is entitled to consent on data that they use. A lot of the things I do actually like on the privacy policies on Apple's website that they've released. They go into talking about Siri. You know, there's a lot of things online at the moment about how Amazon's watching you through your Alexa, or Apple's watching you through their HomePod, I believe it's called. And it goes into saying Siri learns what you need and not who you are. So it can't differentiate between two users. It's literally just there as a support system. And I think that's going to help a lot of people, and it's going to help increase Apple's sales, which is why this is a good play from Apple. So that's what Apple have to say, and they say that it's purely a privacy policy thing. But before we move on to what Facebook said, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, said, "We believe users should have the choice over the data that is being collected about them and how it's used. Facebook can continue to track users across apps and websites as before. App tracking transparency in iOS 14 will just require that they ask for permission first." So basically what this means is for every iOS 14 user, instead of an opt-out system, it's going to be an opt-in system. So when you go onto the app, it's going to ask you, the user, whether you want to be tracked and whether you want to have retargeting ads. I personally am a big fan of targeted ads. I don't know whether that's because I understand them a lot better than other people because I'm in the industry, but I would much rather see an ad that I know I'm going to like than something that's completely unrelated to me. Now, moving on to Facebook's response. So Facebook released a full newspaper ad saying that Apple don't care about small business owners, that they're doing it in an extremely troubling time for small business owners anyway during this pandemic. And I do agree. And that's because during this pandemic, small business owners especially have realized the potential of Facebook ads and realized the potential of digital marketing campaigns. And I don't know the statistic around it, but there's been a massive increase in advertisements during this pandemic because it's the best way to reach your customers, and it's the best way to reach the exact people that want to buy that product or service. And if you're taking that away from business owners, or even just making it harder for business owners that don't have an agency working for them at the moment, then they're going to see a dramatic drop in the performance of their ads, and it's going to affect them massively. And of course, that is dependent on the severity of how this new iOS 14 software affects ads, which we don't know yet, like I've said before. And something really interesting which someone raised to me earlier today, and I don't know the logistics behind this, I don't know whether it's possible, but what would happen if Facebook removed their Facebook app, their Instagram app, the WhatsApp app, and all the associated apps that they own and businesses that Facebook own, and they removed it from Apple iPhones, whether that would be possible and what implications that would have. So if they said to Apple, right, you're not letting us advertise, that is our whole business model gone, we're going to remove our apps from you, we're going to make it only for Android users. How many people would actually leave the Apple platform and go over to Android? It's just something for thought. I don't know how possible it is. Please let me know in the comments if you know whether that would be possible, or and what you think people would do if that was the case, and Apple's response to that if they did do that, because I know social media is a massive part of what people use their phones for. A lot of people only use their phones for social media. So before I dive into the changes which Facebook predict are going to happen, I'm just going to go over a few fundamentals of digital marketing for people that have clicked on this ad just to keep up with the news or just to keep up with what's actually happening. So Facebook's business model is solely based around advertisers targeting specific people and showing a specific ad on their newsfeed over a selection of apps that Facebook own or Facebook can advertise on. So as you're scrolling through your feed, often you'll see sponsored posts. Once you go look at a pair of shoes online, and then you go back onto Facebook, you'll see that exact pair of shoes. And that's because you've been targeted, you've been tracked via a Facebook pixel, which follows you over back onto social media, onto Google, or on any different websites. And there are loads of different types of Facebook ads you do. When you create your Facebook ads, you choose an objective, you can choose traffic, you can choose conversion campaigns, and conversion campaigns are the retargeting ads. So once you've got all of your data and you've built this big audience, you know the exact type of people that have been clicking on your ad, and you then want to show a new ad or the same ad to those exact same people, you can do a conversion ad. So if you've got 100 purchases on your product, you can then do a lookalike conversion ad and say, right, target 1,000 of these types of people and convert them. So then moving on to the Facebook pixel, it's a small piece of code that you put on your website or your client's website, which collects all that data, which you can then use in your ads manager. So those are a few of the fundamentals which I wanted to go through before we go through what Facebook has put out in response to Apple changing these terms and conditions. So going onto this website, this is the blog post that Facebook have released. So they say, Apple has announced changes with iOS 14 that will affect how we receive and process conversion events from tools such as the Facebook Pixel. Businesses that advertise mobile apps, as well as those that optimize, target, and report on web conversion events from any of our business's tools will be affected. So it says everyone will be affected. They go on to say that in accordance to the app tracking transparency framework, Apple's policy will prohibit certain data collection. So the data collection, at the moment, you can literally track everything. You can track landing page views, you can track specific button clicks, and that all feeds your Facebook pixel, and this looks like it's going to be prohibited. So we're not going to be able to collect as much data, which means the audience size of our targeting on Facebook could be decreased. We obviously don't know yet. So it then goes on to actions that you can help prepare. And throughout this document, I noticed that they split it up into two sections, whether you advertise on apps, which will be your audience network campaigns, or whether you're just doing usual web conversion events. And they don't mention much about just general traffic ads, which makes me think that that's not going to be affected massively, and the audience size of the targeting isn't going to be affected massively. But don't hold me to that. I think that the main problem that Apple has with their privacy policy at the moment is that people aren't happy with the amount of retargeting and the amount of specific data collection businesses have on its users. But moving on to a bigger one is that your Facebook pixel may now only optimize for a maximum of 8 conversion events. So you need to prioritize which conversion events you're gonna want to have on your website. So whether that be purchase, whether that be a lead, whether that be a page view. Now 8 still is a lot. So you can still get a lot of data out of this. You just need to be more careful and more methodical with how you're setting up your Facebook pixel and how you're using the data that you're allowed to collect. So this is the biggest section of the blog that they've put out, the reporting limitations. So with a lot of these, like the delayed reporting, they go in to say that the app install campaigns are going to be affected the most, but web conversion events will be reported based on the time the conversion occurred and not the associated ad impressions. So it's just going to take longer for your purchase to come through on your ad account, if that's even still available. So ads might look like they're performing worse than they actually are, but that's not a problem. You can just say that to your clients. You can just say that to the owner of the business you're running ads for, and they'll understand, because they'll still know how much money's actually coming in compared to before when you weren't running these Facebook ad campaigns. Estimated results, obviously, if you can't get as much data from your website or from your funnels as before, then Facebook are going to have to just use statistical modeling to predict what the actual response to your ads was. The biggest one for me, which is going to affect my business the most, is no support for breakdown. So in our marketing strategy at the moment, when we find a winning ad, we really dive deep into the breakdown of the ads to find out which genders, which ages, and which delivery methods are performing the best. And that's how we then go to scale our ads. So this is going to be a bit of a problem, but this just means in your testing process, you're just going to have to be extremely more methodical. You're going to have to touch more bases and test more ads if it means you can't dive deeper into your winning ads, which isn't a problem. It just means you're going to have to test longer, and it might take a bit longer to find winning ads. It also might cost you a bit more to find winning ads. Because you don't have as much access to extremely targeted people, it's going to take you a bit longer to find those specific people. It's going to take you a bit longer and a bit more money to get them converted and into your sales funnel. It then goes on to a 28-day click-through window, which means when you go to make custom audiences and lookalike audiences, then the data is only going to be from around 7 days and not 28 days. So you're only allowed to hold the data for a shorter amount of time. But Facebook says all your historical data is still going to be there. They recommend you to export it now so you can still use it later on. Targeting limitations, it mentions the size of your app connections, custom audiences, and website custom audiences may decrease. So it doesn't necessarily say the targeting of a normal ad is going to be affected, so the reach will go down. It just says your retargeting size will go down because that will be based on your specific pixel only, which is why this doesn't really affect my business massively. So because all of my clients are service-based businesses and our success level of our campaigns are based on how many leads we bring them, a lot of our ads, our traffic ads, we do a lot of retargeting, so this will still affect us. Because like I said in my previous video, to get a customer to trust your brand and purchase from your brand, they need to come into contact with it between 7 and 12 times. And Facebook ad retargeting is a fantastic way to skip through those 7 to 12 interactions really quickly to get that purchase through the door as quickly as possible. This just means if you can't retarget now, or your retargeting is limited, you're going to need to find new ways to retarget your potential customers. And that can be with SMS marketing, it can be with email marketing, it can be all of these, or you can try even YouTube ads or Snapchat ads, Pinterest ads. You just need to not rely on one traffic source so heavily. And I know that's tough because I do it as well. Facebook ads is so good and it can produce such a good return on investment for you and your clients that it's quite tough not to rely on it so heavily. But if you use other methods and other traffic sources and just rely on Facebook ads to get that initial traffic through the door, and then I don't think that it will affect you too badly. And what I also think this means is it's going to change the environment and it's going to change customer behavior. So if, say, e-commerce stores that rely even more heavily on retargeting ads, if they can no longer use that Facebook pixel to make these conversion events, then the behavior of customers and the behavior of businesses is going to change. So the Instagram shop and the Facebook shop could become more heavily used in e-commerce businesses. And then alongside that, with service-based businesses and service-based agencies, I preach a lot on this channel and on my Instagram page that the quality of lead increases massively when you take that lead away from Facebook and onto a website and get that lead information through a sales funnel. So if this can no longer happen or your strategy no longer works through that method, a lot of people resort back to Facebook lead ads on the Facebook platform itself. And I know the quality of lead isn't as good through that method. I believe Facebook are going to find a way around this. They're going to improve that lead generation process with their Facebook lead ads. And that's going to be the sort of change in customer behavior, and people are going to move more to on Facebook marketing, which could mean a massive change in your marketing strategy. It could mean a massive change with what you're currently doing with your clients. But when things like this happens, it's all about adapting and changing your marketing strategy so that you're not negatively affected. So one thing Facebook has produced is a 3-step checklist of how they think that you should respond and how they think that you can prepare for this introduction of iOS 14. So they say, plan to operate with 8 conversion events per domain now before it actually is introduced, so it's not such a shock when it's suddenly introduced. So change your marketing, try and play around with how you're going to deal with just 8 conversion events on your website at the moment and see how you can deal with it so you can prepare. And also initial configuration and how to change it, and complete domain verification. So completing a domain verification isn't a new thing, that's always been around. Facebook recommends you do that anyway. That's just verifying your domain with Facebook so that when you're pushing ads out and you're sending people to your domains, they know that it's a verified domain and that's the correct landing page that you want to be sending your ads to. And it just helps your ads get approved quicker, and it's just going to help you out getting your ads approved. So one thing that I haven't seen many people cover on this topic is how big of the Facebook audience pie is going to be actually affected by iOS 14. So I'm just going to draw a quick pie chart of the overall Facebook users from the different devices to see how big of a problem this could potentially be. So 96% of Facebook users use Facebook on a mobile device. That could be Android or Apple. And Apple have a 45% market share in the smartphone market. So of this 96%, 45% are Apple. So this is Apple smartphones. This is Android plus others. We'll just class this as other. And then of this pie, you also have 25% of Facebook users that are using Facebook on a desktop or a laptop. And we'll cover this over a bit of both, because half will be Android users as well, and half will also be Apple users, and there'll be a bit in other. So that can be 25%. So that is a very small percentage of the pie, which are only Apple smartphone users. We have all of this other section, which isn't going to be affected by iOS 14. But then we also need to think about iPhone users, which aren't going to download iOS 14. So say 50% of Apple smartphone users download iOS 14, and I don't even think it's going to be that much, because people don't have the most up-to-date iPhone. A lot of people don't even update their iPhone. I don't think my iPhone's even on the most up-to-date software. So of this percentage of Apple iPhone users, say half download iOS 14, and then through this statistic here, around 50% of people were actually happy, and in a latest study that Facebook did, they predicted the percentage decrease would be around 60% in audience network return on ad spend. So say 50% of the iOS 14 downloads say no, and 50% say yes. It's only this small percentage of the Facebook usage pie that you can no longer do your specific advertising to. So you have all of this that Facebook ads isn't going to change at all to. So people are making a massive deal out of this, but there's still this massive other audience which you can still market to. And this doesn't mean it's going to stay like this forever, because Samsung or other Android users might introduce similar policies, or Apple might introduce these policies on all of their laptops and computers as well, which I assume they will do when those updates come out. So this will keep on rising, and as more people get newer iPhones, this will increase, but the yeses will also increase. So it's not going to change things that dramatically to begin with, but that percentage of no's will probably increase as it goes on. That being said, Facebook, I imagine, will invest a lot of money into advertising the importance of having these Facebook pixels and the importance of collecting this data, because I think that the biggest problem around this privacy policy is that people don't understand what Facebook are using this data for. People think that they're being watched. People think that Facebook and these large businesses know exactly what they're doing, and I'm sure they do. I'm sure there is a lot of bad things that these companies do with this data. But I think it's all about education. These large companies like Facebook, like Google, need to inform their users a lot more on how their data is being used. I think Apple introducing this policy is going to crank companies like Facebook and Google into gear to start informing their customers what they're using their data for, which I do think is a good thing. So like with all things, like with COVID, when COVID first happens, I myself lost loads of business from my agency, but now, moving into 2021, my agency has never been in a better place because it kicked me into gear. It got me to get my processes sorted, it got me to reshuffle all of my business, and I think this is going to do the same. It's going to cause a lot of Facebook advertisers to relook their strategy, and I think people can come out of it the other side in a lot better place. It's all about adapting to the current times that you're in. With business, if you're owning a business, and especially a social media marketing agency, you're going to have to adapt constantly. That's one of the biggest attributes that I preach about on my Instagram page, is that you need to adapt constantly. You can't just rest on your laurels. You can't get one client and think, right, I'm just going to breeze it from here. You need to be constantly going through your processes, constantly improving your agency, constantly improving your marketing strategies to keep up with current times. Because social media wasn't the same 2 minutes ago, let alone 2 years ago. So things like this are going to be constantly happening, and you can either change with the times or get left behind. So that being said, I hope you got a lot of value out of this video. I hope it sort of put you at ease a bit more, and it's something a bit different to all these scary articles which are saying Facebook's over forever, Smma is dead. There's still massive opportunities on the table. There's still massive opportunities with Facebook ads, and there always will be. So please follow my Instagram. I post daily tips in notepad form. I'll post a few around here now so you can have a look at them. So click the link in the description and follow me on Instagram. That'd be great. I want to build a massive community on